Hey, NWSID friends, I'm Peter Spalding. I am here with our designer member, Susan Grady, who has been gracious enough to give us some time and talk with us during our series that's all about designers finding their niche. I'm so grateful to have you here to tell us about your career and how you got where you are today. And I think it's it's difficult to necessarily look at your work and say Susan Grady has a niche, um, but I think your niche is really being a client partner and focusing heavily um, on being sort of the backbone for them. So I'm curious if you see that as an appropriate niche identification for you, and if that was always a natural inclination for you in your business, or if you got there through some trial and error.
Well, I do think that's a great description. Where were you when I was doing my website and coming up with my, client? That is what I do. So I think that's a real great description of me. It's a process. I always felt like when I started out, I've always been involved with working together, and I've always enjoyed coming alongside people and helping. So it was a natural progression for me. I think as I went further and further into my career and did try different things and stuff, I realized really how unique that actually was, that there were a lot of people out there that didn't do that. They were, I lost count how many times I've had contractors or clients say, wow, you're not like somebody else I've worked with or another designer, and I think that really started, the light bulb started going off in my head that, okay, I really do have a skill set here, and I have a natural ability that is translating quite well into finding my path in this crazy world of design that we have, that has so many different myriads of directions that you can go in. So I think it was a progression, and every job I had just kind of pointed me further and further in that direction.
Yeah. So I kind of, when I phrased this question to you offline, I said there are a lot of designers who are about making their stamp. So I'm curious, some of the, which by the way, I think is okay. I think sometimes people love an aesthetic and they become known for that, and a client knows what they're getting and wants that.
Yeah.
And so that's great. Um, but I'm curious, what are some of the comments that you were getting from contractors and people that you were working with that sort of indicated to you that you were different?
Well, designers are a pain to work with.
Uh, we are.
I mean, we can be,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it. We are, we really have an attention to detail. And so uh, I think sometimes that is kind of irritating to people. I think with contractors, sometimes it was, I think designers almost overstepping their, not having clear lines of delineation between what the
Yeah.
contractor does, what their job is and their responsibility, and what the designers is. And a lot of designers are, they're selling the products, they're doing a lot of stuff. They're kind of crossing into some of that contracting world where the contractor is the one that ultimately is taking a lot of times the burden of responsibility for the warranties and all that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
the designer is kind of grabbing a little too, from their perspective, grabbing a little bit too much.
Having too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
interesting. In my own business, I've always done the contracting piece of it as well.
yeah,
And partially because I think it's very hard to have an amicable relationship all the way through when you are attending to every single detail. And sometimes you walk in and something's not right and you need it to change. Um, but you don't want everything to go haywire because you are asking for too many little things that
right.
make people want to kill you.
Well, and part of that is developing that good the contractors I work with now, we've developed really good working relationships, and we take things offline a lot. I mean, I've had times where
Yeah.
I've come in and said, this just is, it's awful. It's just go in, or I call them and say, hey, heads up, we've got a problem here. Or I think another real advantage that I have is that the client will often trust me, and they might spout off with me or tell me some things that are irritating them along the way, but they aren't able to communicate that for whatever reason to their contractor. So I kind of try to work alongside my contractor and have his back and vice versa. So when things do go wrong, which they do, it always does. There's not a single project on earth that doesn't have problems. It's just the nature of it. The guys that I've learned to work with, we just kind of work through, we problem solve that together. So I thought about years ago, well, maybe I ought to get a contractor's license. I like getting in there. I'm like hands-on.
Yeah.
I'm often on the project and, crawling around hands and knees looking like a messy, I don't dress up a lot too.
It is a hard job to dress for, man.
It's very difficult, is it not?
Yeah.
There's certain expectations as a designer, but you're mucking around the mud. It's like, oh. So
Yes.
so I just have learned years ago I went to a seminar up at I think it was at Seattle Design Center, and one guy said, it was really interesting. He was just talking about the differences and advantages, disadvantages to having a contractor's license and this sort of thing. And his experience was that once you take on the hat of a contractor, you very often kind of lose the hat of the designer when it gets right down to it, because the job starts going haywire and the subs are messing up, and they're coming and screaming at you as the contractor, and you lose that it kind of, it puts you in this different role, and you just have to be prepared for that if that's what you want to do. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I thought,
I think you're very wise to leave that to somebody else.
I have lots of friends like yourself that I would say, if that's the kind of design firm you want, I'll refer you. I'll do a great job for you. I'll cheer you on. You can ask me anything along the way, but
Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to acknowledge that you have an awesome little video about working with Susan Grady Interiors on your website. And I mean, it's really nicely done. And I've watched it a couple times now, and every time I'm like, oh, this is just, working with you must just feel so good. So, I mean, kind of curious who helped you create that video, and what the impetus was. And do your projects start as you've delineated in the video? Is every project totally different at the beginning, or do you kind of always have a series of intro steps?
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. That was hard work to do those videos.
I bet.
And very nerve-wracking. I was trying to think, there was somebody that I've met in the industry, and can't remember if they were actually in NWSID. I think they were at one point, but I'll probably one of the contractor groups. And he kind of came alongside me. He connected me with this company that was doing videos. They would help you kind of sell and market yourself. So I took this one-day seminar, and they ended up with a video at the end, which was very much, like a real estate agent would do it wasn't where I wanted, but it gave me to see that, okay, I could do this and I could do it well. And it was way back when video really wasn't, it was just sort of coming out, but people were not, and I'm usually, daylight dollar short on advertising stuff. But I thought, hey, I got one here, So I zipped my lip, and I then went to another seminar, and a guy was there that did help with SEO, search engine, and online advertising. And I thought, okay, I need that because I'm not technologically savvy that way. So I hired that guy and showed him this video, and he said, I got it. This is exactly what we need to do, but I know who to give to you. Can't remember her name right now, but so I hired her, and she came alongside, and we created, I had 4 videos on there, and we came up with the ideas of what to do and kind of preliminary questions of how to, put it all together, and then formulated it. And I worked with my web guy to put it into my website. So it definitely was professionally done. There was, spent the money to do it. And I kept quiet about it until it was
Until
done.
it was done. Yes. I mean, that can be that. If you say I'm making this video, then people have an expectation. And
Yeah. And there was kind of a time where people were kind of picking each other's brains about what to do. And I thought, I'm not sharing with everybody this. I'm going to be a little coy with this, it's
yeah,
kind of my little deal. So I did that. And then I had to actually look back at the video because you had mentioned about, do you follow that process? And I thought, what did I say in there? Did I? And actually looking back, and I do follow it pretty well. Every job is different. There's no doubt. But my initial time at least starts with kind of a question and answer, a meet and greet almost, are we a
yeah,
good fit? I mean, and what are they really wanting to do? And excuse me, is that my skill set? And if
yeah,
it's a good fit, then I go forward. So it's very similar to that. It kind of morphs from client to client because sometimes it's just real quick and I walk in and I just get it. I know what needs to be done. Other times it's not so easy. It's a struggle. So
yeah. A couple of years ago, once we had gotten out of our phase of first projects where I think I was just excited and I think my enthusiasm was infectious enough that clients just sort of were like, Peter has got this. It's going to be great.
yeah,
Um, we kind of tried to implement we watched or we listened to Kimberly Seldon. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She has a podcast about running a design business. And she like delineated this multi-step process. And this is not a diss, but I found it so not intuitive for myself
yeah,
that I would go in and I would present this and it was clear, but it was not me.
wasn't you?
And it was putting a wall between the client and me.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm curious if you've ever tried to implement some systems that you found just don't work.
Once I did the same sort of thing where I
Yeah,
tried to present and put it all together like this. And it was so awkward. I could not even rehearse enough to be comfortable enough to give confidence. I don't think, everybody
yeah,
thinks, well, you got it, but man, it was not fun. So what I ended up doing is I don't ignore those suggestions and those classes and all of that. I've taken many of those along the way, but boy, I pick and choose. I glean, and it's just a conglomeration of all these different ideas from a bunch of different people that I would hear and I say, oh, that I can do that. That's me. That feels right. That feels comfortable. I think I could get that and work that in when I get past kind of the nervous heebie-jeebies, to where
yes,
it's just a natural flow. And so
yes,
I think I just think for me, it's probably for you too, Peter. It's just there's just this natural progression. You learn to go with the ebb and flow of what's going on with your client and what's going on with the project, and
yeah,
sometimes it's just really straightforward and clear, and other times it's like, whoa, okay, I didn't see that coming. So,
yes, yes, yes. Okay, I didn't preface this question with you, so if you don't feel comfortable answering, just say, well, we got to move on to the next one. But I'm curious with that ebb and flow. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of money
yeah,
all the time. And sometimes I do find that the ebb and flow is the best process, but people need to know where they're going financially. Our clients do.
oh yeah.
Um, and so um, as ideas germinate, how do I assume you've presented some numbers way up front. Um, what's the discussion look like if the numbers are changing and
You're going over your budget.
okay, you're just blunt
I'm
and
blunt. Right at
okay,
the very beginning, I find out Well, because a lot of my clients are remodels. Some people are DIYers that just need some direction. Not as many of that as in the past, but especially now. I mean, try and figure a price. It's a moving target.
Impossible. I
It is
mean, in
impossible,
two
and it
weeks it'll be different.
changes. Yeah, exactly. So a few years back, it was much easier to say, but I've been around long enough, and as you have, to know that, you know, when a budget is just initial budget is just completely not realistic. We just have a real frank conversation. And so then I have a client right now that's got a really tight budget. And I kept saying, they kept wanting to do these other things. And I said, your budget won't allow that. If you're trying to stick with this budget, we can't do that. And, I've
Yeah.
had clients before where they were on a tight budget and they fell in love with this great backsplash. It ended up being one I put into my own kitchen, and she wanted, I said, you can't have it. It's too much money for your budget.
And I'll put it in my kitchen.
Money. Huh?
So does she just come visit your kitchen?
Yes, well, she hasn't yet because it happened during COVID, but she will be here. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
That was pretty funny. That's about the first time that happened. But yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty blunt. I've always been real cognizant of pricing, and I do well on my end with when I'm working with contractors and stuff. I know a lot of times they'll say, well, we got to cut the budget, we got to cut the finishes. No, can't cut them any further. I mean, I'm down,
Yeah.
and
Gone to where I can go.
yeah, I've gone to where I've gone. I've actually gone back and said to somebody, this is not even 1%. I can bring it down a little bit more, but that's not even 1% of the whole budget. And it's the very thing that we're going to end up looking at the end. So you've got to cut it somewhere else too, because they won't see all that stuff, but they'll see what's left afterwards. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I've never quite thought about though. It's only 1%. That's good advice.
yeah, I did.
Take out all the framing. You don't need any of that.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that.
Okay. What's my next question for you?
A lot of times, Peter, on those things too, though, I found people are just trying to add things to the budget that really, they're kind of, some of those things are extras, frivolous kinds of things. They, so
Yes.
things,
Well,
and so
I mean,
make sure they realize that.
for me, I think things that fall into that category are always like really state-of-the-art appliances or
Yes.
sound systems
Yeah.
that in 5 years are going to be completely outdated, and you've wired them into your house. And I mean, they're not going to help you sell it in the future, and they actually aren't going to help you enjoy it more because they won't work.
Yeah.
So that's where I try to become really practical. You just need a light switch that turns the light on and off, not
and
one that,
every now and then.
yeah. Okay, what are the attributes that you look for in a client, and what do you think the attributes a client looks for and appreciates in you? And then sort of with that, have you ever said no to someone, and why?
Okay. For clients, I look at how engaged they are. I want to know if it's a couple, are they both going to be involved? I really kind of listen in and say, how open are they with their money conversations? How easy are they able to communicate their likes, their dislikes? Do I like them? Do they seem like nice people? Do we seem like we would enjoy one another? So I look for a lot of relational kinds of connections in those first interviews, and is to get a sense of how comfortable I am with them. I think conversely, I think they're looking for somebody that's really going to listen to them, that they think can really help solve their problem. Because almost always when they get to me, it's because they just can't figure out what to do. They're overwhelmed. And so am I going to be somebody that they can work with, that will listen to their ideas, but that will also help them along, excuse me, and guide them and direct them and be frank with them and honest. And likable. I think too that they like to be liked. They like to kind of develop a friendship and a respect for that. So Um, and have I said no? Not too often. I've done like one-time consultations and walked out and thought, not going to go further with that, or it helped me to hone a little bit better to say I should have kind of pre-qualified that a little bit better with what they were wanting to do.
Are those paid consultations, or is it?
Yes, yeah. I almost always a while back I stopped doing the the free consultation. I thought it takes me time and money and gas and all that to drive and take the time out of my day and time away from my other clients to
Yeah.
have consultations. So that's also a qualifier. They're not willing to pay. That's a big qualifier.
That is. It's usually like either just getting some free advice.
Right.
Um, and a free consultation, if we're being honest, I think takes about a half of a day away from your work. I mean,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not 1 free hour, it's like 4 free
Yeah.
hours.
By the time you get in the car, yeah, exactly. And drive. And first, I did one right after when we first started coming out of COVID and we were released to leave the house. And it was just a one time we had rescheduled. I went up there, same thing. I went up to Vancouver. I came back down. I thought, that just was not fun. Why did I do that? I
Yeah.
got paid. I mean, I was covered for my time, but that was not fun. I'm not doing that again. So I think
Yeah.
just get older and older in your career, you
You
learn that
know.
you can say no. It's okay to say no.
Yeah. I think you're doing everybody a disservice if you don't say no, actually.
Hmm.
And not just yourself, your client too, because they're not right for you and
Yeah.
you're not right for them.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, tell me about your background. Did you have a profession before this? Has this been your profession forever? Was this your dream profession? How are
It
you here
was
today?
my profession forever.
Yeah.
I started when I went way back when I went to college over 40 years ago. We had to declare majors to
To
before we
get
went
in.
into school to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had looked around. I've always been creative. I come from a creative family. I come from my father's ranch, raised on a ranch, became an electrical engineer. So I have a lot of engineer skills, mindset in me. I've learned to problem solve with my dad, and mom was very creative. And I was in San Jose, and they used to have model homes where you'd go down the track home and you see 5 or 6 homes and you go in. They let us ride. We kids, high school,
Yeah.
ride our bikes, and we could just walk in. No adults were in there, and we would just walk through all these things. And I'd look around and thought, this is pretty cool, but I could do this and do it better. So that seems like a fun field to go into. So I signed up and went into design and went down to school, and that design department was in the home economics department back then. They didn't have a lot of individual interior design programs unless you went to big schools back east, or I could have gone to
Uh,
San Jose State, but I was leaving. I wanted to get away from home, so anyway, I did that. And then coming out of school, I worked initially for an independent designer, learned a lot about bookkeeping in that experience and what to do and what not to do, how to run your business. That was important. Worked in a
yes. That's
showroom.
better to learn on someone else's dime.
Totally, it totally was. And so I learned a lot about design during that. And then I actually ended up working in a fabric company as a salesperson, and inside and outside salesperson. And so I've worked in the showroom in San Francisco. So all of those little things I did along the way were in the field, but
Yeah.
going towards trying to figure out where do I want to be. I mean, I had to make a living. I had to eat. I'd moved back home, so I had some help that way. But it was out the door, kiddo. So I did a lot of those things. So then as my husband and I got married and kind of transitioned around, I moved into kind of different positions, worked at a furniture store, went independent for a little bit, actually did secretarial work because I needed to pay the bills. But all of that just funneled into where I am today. So it was a process.
Great. So you've always known, but you did meander a little bit to grab all the skills that
Yeah,
coalesce.
yeah, exactly.
Was any one of those jobs one that you liked as much as what you do now?
Oh, that's a good question. No. No.
No.
I love,
Okay.
I just love, I love where I'm at. I love all of them helped me to be able to do what I do. And I love working with the people I work with and the connections I have. And I just I
Yeah.
can't imagine. To sit in an office just nearly kills me. To sit in a showroom hour after, I just can't. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, me too. I really have a struggle if I need to be doing the same thing all
Yeah,
day long.
yeah.
Um,
My secretarial skills, I mean, that was an excellent job because I learned, we were learning, we went from typewriters to word processing to, um, doing, newsletters. And so I mean, some of those skills really did translate into putting things together for my business, my systems and stuff too. So there's,
yeah,
there's not a job that's worthless out there.
no, there's not. I mean, I have almost no secretarial skills at all. I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, maybe I should go try that for a minute and see if I mean, someone would be so angry at me if I was their assistant. They would be like, um, what happened here? Um, I am curious about your education experience, and let me, I guess, offer my own probably not fair bias. I think that contemporary design education is pretty focused on commercial
Um,
um, work, and I think sometimes not enough on the artistry of creating a beautiful place to actually live. Um, and there are some things like knowing, 150,000 double rubs or whatever. Um, like how critical really is that to being able to do your job? I think they get bogged down in some of the technical aspects of the job. And I'm curious, since yours was in the home ec department, was it more residentially focused? Well, I mean, what were the things you came out knowing?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because it was I would say it was more residential mainly. I mean, there were certainly people that were going into commercial, but we were an accredited ASID accredited school, student chapter
Yeah.
school. So, um, but I think what I really loved about my school was that it wasn't just so focused on the technical things of design. I mean, I had to take classes with the architects,
Yeah.
I had to draw with the architects, and that isn't a pain. Let me tell you. You have graciously a instructor that says you're not designing the exterior of buildings. You're doing, it just cuts you some slack. But I took part of my education was things like in business law, accounting. It was just really a broad.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really
That's
really
great.
broad. And then my focus, and all my what do we call them? The not the basics.
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that.
Like core curriculum type.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. Thank you. Duh. It was.
Yeah.
It was. Those were focused on design, and we did. Would learn. We would do even watercoloring or whatever, and I learned right away. If somebody wants a color rendering, I'm hiring it done because that's not my skill set. But I learned it really helps. So I think
Yeah.
because that particular school was a broad education, I think that benefited me greatly compared to even some of the design schools I that were used to be up here and stuff. I think, it doesn't do you any good to go in and come out and not know how to kind of market or run a business,
Yeah. It's not.
hire
Yeah.
somebody.
You really need all those skills for this job because
Yeah.
most people eventually are going to work for themselves. And you got to know how to do a lot more than just this very narrow focus, I think.
Yeah. And you have to know when you don't know what you need to know. And that to
Yeah.
say, that I can't, I
Yes.
need to hire that done. I need help with that.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
have somebody, a mentor or a friend come alongside you and say, help, what do I do?
Yeah.
But you
Yes.
can't do it all.
No, there aren't enough
We think we
hours in the
can at
day.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as a small business owner, you want, I think, to be able to do a lot of it because you need to be profitable. You need to pay yourself. And there's a very delicate balance between outsourcing for things you don't feel you can do and actually bringing home some money.
Hence why I've always worked out of my home. I never had an outside studio.
That's really smart.
Yeah, I thought I wanted one. It wasn't that I didn't want one and think that'd be kind of cool,
Yeah.
and helpful. But the reality is I go to my clients. I go to their place. I go to the job sites. I seldom do they come to me, and if they do, it's
Yeah.
usually showrooms. So why would I? It just made no
Yeah.
sense to me to spend all that money on a
Space.
rent. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Leasing,
Yeah.
forget it. Pay myself.
Good. Brilliant. All right, let's move on. Yeah, maybe tell me about some of the people you rely on every day to help you deliver this sort of client partnership. I mean, we've talked a little bit about contractors, but we have clients and we have vendors, and really both of them need to be important to us.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me about your favorite people to work with or your favorite types of people, the people you most need.
I have developed a huge network of vendors that I've met along the way in design, in NWSID, and then just in different areas that I've been. The clients are so important, and I love them when I'm working with them. I can't. It's why I do what I do, but they come and go, and when the project is done, as much as you think, oh, we're going to hang in there and be longtime friends, seldom does that happen. Life goes on and everybody moves on. The vendors are there every day. So a lot of my NWSID people, I just, the CFMers, the Fergusons, I'll forget Bradleys, everybody in there, I have found I've connected with people in all those different avenues, and they are why I do what I do. They're my backbone. They're my support network. They help me when I get in a pickle somewhere, and man, they just cover me time and time again. And I also really support them, and I speak well of them. I'm not one to sit around and complain about this person did that or didn't do that,
Right.
because it happens to me, it happens to everybody. I don't want to burn those bridges. They've built into me so much. And spent thousands and thousands of dollars on me, training me, sending me to places that I would never have gone. I've met people I would never have met if it hadn't been. I just can't speak enough of that. It's just really, and it actually, it is essential. It's another thing that's really sets me apart, I think, with my clients. It sets me apart because one of the selling points is that I can really honestly say my vendors will have my back, and they'll go to bat for you if I go to bat for you. So on a project, if something's going wrong, and I come in and say something, because I don't often complain, but when I come in and say, hey, this isn't going right, I just get such a quick and thorough response. It's amazing.
It's funny you bring this up. I don't do this very often, and usually when I do it, there's a decent part of me that regrets having done it. But occasionally, I'll work with somebody. Usually, it's a friend who wants help, but they really can't afford the whole service, and so I'll put together a budget for them. They'll pay me for that time. And then I'll say, these are the people that I would trust to do this project. And that can be good. It can be very dangerous because you may have somebody who ends up mistreating a vendor who's really important to you.
Absolutely.
In this particular instance, I think this vendor was really busy, sent a young kid who really didn't know what he was doing, and so the execution was not going well at all, and the client was really, really frustrated. And I had, I had removed myself, but I still recommended this person. Well, a few days went on, and they were trying to rectify the problem themselves, and they said, Peter, we need your help. And I emailed the vendor, and I was like, we've had a great working relationship, and I entrusted this job to you. And I mean, the next morning, it was all being taken out and put back in the way that it was supposed to be done at no extra cost.
Yeah.
And the client called, and they were like, I just want to know, are you in the mafia or something? And I was like, you know what? I think we all have different attributes that help us get the tools together that we need. And mine, and it sort of sounds like yours, are being kind and charming as much as humanly possible, and then when it is absolutely necessary, exercising the sort of, this must change, this must be better.
The hammer comes down.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I agree, but it's always done privately, and
yes,
I don't think I've ever said when somebody's messed up. I will sing their praises when they come alongside and make it right. But
yes.
I'm just really respectful of that as well, because I know at some point I'm going to mess up, and I would hope my person would come
Would
alongside.
help you. Yeah.
Yeah, come on, we got it. Let's take care of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I can't say enough about having strong relationships. Can you tell us about a time when something has gone horribly wrong?
yeah, actually, there's just in light of this conversation, I remember a client that I had. She's kind of a little bit of a do-it-yourself, but she was redoing the kitchen, moved into a new home, old new home to her, and putting in a peninsula, and we were doing the cabinetry, and my supplier, and didn't catch that she had already bought her appliances, and she bought a
Oh
range,
no.
not for the peninsula, so all the controls were in the back.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. And she went ballistic. Well, she had bought it like at Home Depot, but she was going railing on the cabinet supplier. And it wasn't their mistake. It was clearly hers. So long story short, the manager of the showroom got involved with her, found her a really good range that would work, and save the problem, or solve the problem. But then I had to kind of snicker, because he said, oh, well, I hope you don't get mad at me, but I told her, because she was such a pill, and she was, he said, the only reason I'm doing this for you is because you're Susan Grady's client, and we value Susan Grady.
Well, that's wonderful.
Rough, so
yeah, that's great.
So there was that one that was, again, a vendor covered me and helped me out.
Yeah.
And then another one, I had a really good client. It was, boy, she was one of the ones that spent just, unbelievable amounts of money on draperies and all kinds of stuff. But it was one of those clients where it was her money, her husband didn't know, and
yeah.
And everything went really well until all of a sudden, like the final check, and she was a slow payer, and it was 6 months before I got my money.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did that? That was hard for me, because I thought, first off, I would never do that to somebody.
No.
I just don't. My brain doesn't even get around that. You travel the world and you can't write me a check which is not even your airline tickets. I mean, it was more, but I finally swallowed, and I called a friend in NWSID. I texted her and said, I'm on my way. I went and I knocked on the front door, and I was a bill collector. I collected my bill. She wasn't there, but her husband was. I handed him the bill and said, this is 6 months past due. Would you please have your wife pay your bill?
Yeah.
And I got paid. So that soured that job a bit.
Yeah. Well,
pretty much the end, but
you have to I mean, it's your job.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Those things don't happen very often. And I don't have
Yeah.
in all the years, 40 some years I've been, and 40 is something like that. I've been doing this field. I have very few, really few things that went
Bad stories.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate that way because I know lots of people. I mean, it's just different kinds of jobs that you get involved with, but some of them have had just horror stories, and
Yeah.
I didn't get that one, so
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think part of that though is developing some intuition about who is going to work and who isn't.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, you can't always tell, but I think there are some good indicators.
yeah.
Um, okay. We're getting close to the end here. We've been talking for almost an hour. I'm sure people are getting sick of us, but we're going to keep going
We
just for a
like
little
each
bit
other.
longer. Yeah, we're having a great time. Um, I'm curious if you have any design heroes or any people who have been great mentors to you that you'd like to talk about. Or they don't have to be design heroes. They could be heroes of another sort as well.
Yeah. Well, there's one designer that she would kill me if I said her name. She knows who she is. She was uh I always said she was my mentor as a president for NWSID and was way, way ago. She's not very active in the organizations right now, pretty much retired. She was really helpful for me establishing kind of how to be a president. Um, I think heroes, wow, I don't have any big design heroes, but I have my family has been really helpful for me. Both sides of my family, my in-law side and my parents and my brother and my husband, of course, just supporting my field and my career. And I think my dad. I learned so much just crawling around on the fixing things with him that was really important to me and helpful to me. I think there are along life's path there's been women in the industry that I've watched how to learn to work in the world because you just everybody has struggles. There's things that happen in
Yeah.
life and always have. And it was, I got used to catcalls and stuff like that, on job sites years ago. And I learned from people how to work. I also learned from a number of gentlemen in the industry about how to handle problems and how to really pull the emotions out of it to be able to get to the solution. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just there's so many people that have really impacted my life that in my direction and who I am. It's hard to say. Oh, this is my
Yeah.
hero.
What- no, that was a great answer. I think that sounds something like what my answer would look like as well. So
Yeah.
thank you. Um,
Yes.
two more questions. I wonder if you could tell me about a project or a relationship, uh, a business relationship that you are most proud of.
Um, yeah, there's a couple projects. Well, when I was first out of school, there's a couple I can think back to uh, couples that had hired me to babysit their children when I was in high school and junior high that hired me to help them with their homes. Those were
Oh,
always
that is awesome.
proud. Yeah, that was a switch. Oh, boy, that was a change and trusted me. So I'm really proud of those. And then I think some of the projects I've worked with that are others would have said challenging. I've worked with a couple engineers. I mentioned the one that was the aeronautical engineer, but when he tells you you nailed it, and it's this power wig entrepreneur, it's humbling. So there's that, and then lawyers. I had a couple husband wife lawyer team on the coast, and I love that client. I love that project. I learned from them. They learned from me.
Yeah.
A couple over there at the coast that we just learned so much together and had so much fun. And then I think, if I look over the industry, as you kind of everybody's been reflective these last couple of years, but I think one of the things that I am really proud of is just by God's grace, the reputation that I have in the industry, in my local industry here of design. I'm always kind of amazed who knows me and why they know me, and people remember me from serving as president, and sometimes I can't remember who they are. I may not even really have met them face to face, but
Yeah.
there's just something that's really just humbling about that, and I'm really, really proud of that. I'm proud of that reputation. I'm proud that there are people that feel like I contributed to the industry in a positive way and to their businesses, and they contributed to mine. And it just, yeah, it's that's the thing I've missed, frankly, a lot. I missed clients, but I have really missed these people I've known for years.
Yeah.
By not being able to get together, it's been hard.
Yeah. Well, I guess my last question is, and this might kind of go to the whole purpose of NWSID as an organization. Um, what advice would you give a young person entering the design field, particularly as it pertains to nourishing relationships?
Yeah, it totally does go to NWSID. I think one of the best things I ever did in my career, and I would suggest for others coming into the field, is to nurture that face-to-face relationship and conversation. Get past all the texting, all the emails. There's just something that happens when you sit next to somebody or you do something with somebody. You build these relationships that are so different than what you do online. And online is necessary, there's definitely, but you build these relationships and you learn about each other personally, as well as business wise, and the connections. I mean, I've had clients referred to me. I've had vendors that have been my clients that have hired me, people that I would have never thought hired me, and they've referred me, and they've taught me so much, and they've built into my career, and I've been able to build into them. I just think it's so important to get together and then don't ever look at any job as, may not be your dream job, but don't look at it as a negative thing. Try to find out what it is in that job. It might be a small thing, but that you can take and apply and learn from for going forward in your next advent of whatever job that is that you go into.
I think that's terrific advice. I'll say as a fairly early in my career person myself, that it isn't hard for me to identify with somebody who feels like going and spending time just in conversation that may have nothing to do with our work is worthwhile. But I think it's absolutely critical
I would agree.
to learn how to be with people and care for them.
Yes.
Because I think that will help you go so much further with your clients and with your vendors and with the whole building of your business.
That is an excellent point. I mean, excellent. It's spot on. It's if you're shy, you have a hard time getting to know people. What a safe place to do it and train and kind of grow up in that area. Excellent advice, Peter. I agree.
Well, it came from you first. So, well, Susan, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your Friday afternoon here. And I'm so grateful that NWSID has you as a longtime member, and can't wait to see what you continue to do every day. So,
me too.
all right. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, Peter. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.